Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier with another skills presentation, this time looking at making links in your history. Links between events, concepts and people, for example. Why are links important? First of all, they help us build the narrative, but also because history doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's no Big Bang theory in the kind of history we look at, though we might well spot triggers. Things that happened in the recent past, or even 100 years ago, can be important today. But also, like a high court trial, if evidence can be linked together, or different factors linked together, it makes for a stronger argument. Besides, it's one of the ways to secure a top grade, so it's important to you. Just look at the Balkans and the way in which long-term factors link to the July crisis. Balkan nationalism, Russia's designs on the Balkans, Austria-Hungary's designs on the Balkans, as well as its troubles within its own multinational empire. Wilhelm's policy of Weltpolitik and how it impacted on the Ottoman Empire, and on Austria-Hungary and on Russia. How this affected the developing alliance system and the militarization of Europe, and how it affected the reasoning behind the decisions made by the different great powers during the July crisis. So, linking factors is important because long-term factors link with short-term factors or triggers. And as you can see, I've thrown in a notes framework to link this presentation with my presentation on note-taking. So links everywhere. Links can work in opposite directions. The Treaty of Versailles was so hated by Germans, I think we can say all Germans, that it is not only linked to Hitler's policies to undo the treaty and his increasing popularity as he successfully did so, but at the same time it helps explain Britain's policy of appeasement, as Britain too thought the treaty was too harsh. But there are also links between personal experiences, ideology and policies. Hitler's experience living in Vienna and his experience in World War I helped to shape his domestic, economic, political, cultural and social policies. From his fierce German nationalism and his determination to tear up the Treaty of Versailles, to his concept of Volksgemeinschaft, to his theory on race, and much more. The same with Stalin and Mao and their experiences as hunted revolutionaries in Tsarist Russia for Stalin, or the early days of the Chinese Republic for Mao. And for Stalin, his experience as one of Lenin's commissars, or for Mao, steering a path between the Chinese Communist Party, Moscow and Chiang Kai-shek. There's also their different experiences of civil war. It all led both Stalin and Mao to trust nobody, to see plots everywhere, and so can be linked to their purges of party and society. These causal links are linear or sequential. One follows the other, and this can of course be seen in the consequences of great events too. There are the economic, social and demographic impact of wars, for example. The experiences of women during World War II are clearly linked to the post-war changes in how women saw themselves. The demands made by many women for a change in how society perceived them and treated them, and society's acceptance that things had to change. however reluctant that may have been. That something is the result of something else means that it is linked. But we can also link factors together laterally, that is, side by side, to explain why something happened. Factors can link together and then link to an event. In 1914, alliances made a local conflict more likely to spiral into a wider conflict. And though it was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand that triggered the war, it could have been the Bosnian crisis, Morocco, or something else. And the alliances also link to both Balkan nationalism and imperialism. But they also need to be linked to militarism, because those alliances, no matter that they may have been defensive in nature, identified enemies, triggered militarism, an increase in the size of armies and their weaponry, the naval race between Britain and Germany, and what's more, triggered war plans. And so they also link to the desperate need to mobilise in July, before it was too late. As I could add, did the Moroccan crises actually strengthen the alliances and led to increased militarism. So lateral links all over the place. I've only touched on it. So, how do you assess the significance of links? Timelines help, of course, but think about the visible or measurable impact that they had. The rise to power of an authoritarian leader, the outbreak of a war, the collapse of a major power bloc. The Great Depression is closely linked to unemployment, which is closely linked to the rise in the vote for Nazis, and so the rise to power of Hitler. But you might also think about the degree to which something might have affected the thinking of decision makers and the decisions they made. For example, the impact of alliances and militarism on the pressure to mobilise during the July crisis, or the degree to which Hitler, Mussolini and the Japanese were influenced by the Paris peace treaties. Japan was influenced by them. They thought they had been treated badly, but not as much as Hitler, who was determined to smash the Treaty of Versailles, or Mussolini and the Italian notion of the mutilated victory. And it's the same projecting forward to consequences. How strong is the link between World War II and the change in status for women? Was change already happening before the war? But that's it for now. A look at making links in history that I hope at least serves as a reminder to you of its importance in your work. Now, as we work on skills, it seems appropriate to remind you that I might have a tutorial slot available if you think you might benefit from that. I focus on your individual needs. Of course I do. But I always bring these to exam technique as much as to any historical content. So, if you think you might benefit, just get your parents to get in touch with me at historymadeeasier@gmail.com and we'll see if we can work something out. But for now, let me thank you, as always, for listening and wish you the very best of luck with your studies. Cheers.